specific things allow another person, I think, just cuddle up with you in your spacecraft of one, which is like your singular body moving through the world just this one time.
This is Who's This For, a communicators podcast. Each week I talk with writers, musicians, media makers, and more to get a glimpse at how they craft messages that connect. And now, here's the show.
So, it is my pleasure to welcome to Who's This For, Dessa. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Thanks for being on the show. Thanks for being on this season 2 of the show. First off, do you want to give the audience right out there, that person right there, do you want to give them a little bit of the background about who you are, what you do?
Sure. So my name is Dessa, and I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I now spend my time split between Minneapolis and the East Coast. And I work in the language arts. So I'm a songwriter, and I write essays and poems and short stories. Nearly anything that has to do with the creative use of language is something that I'm interested in. I'm not always good at it on the first go, but almost every form of the creative use of the English language is interesting to me. Yeah.
Nice. And you have, not today, I'm 45, so I hate how years work. But you got a couple decades doing this now, starting out from being from doing poetry to obviously being an MC.
I do, yeah. So I started with an interest in writing poetry. It was like elementary school stuff. So this is juvenilia, essentially. But I had my foray onto the stage essentially as a failed writer. I wasn't sure how to get my stuff into print successfully. And so a friend of mine encouraged me to try performing some of it at a poetry slam. So my entry into the performing arts was rather circuitous and was only as I was essentially trying to tunnel under obstacles that I was encountering in the world of book arts, essentially.
So I guess way back then, what were you bringing from that book arts learning to the stage?
I think my style and my interests have always been pretty literary. So I like a really good extended metaphor. I really like an unexpected turn of phrase. I'm also a fan of, like cool slang, particularly imported from other places. Oh, how does this work?
Yeah.
And so for me, I think some novelists, let's say, feel really comfortable working at like the level of story, meaning they can really see the structure. They zoomed out and they know exactly how that kind of bell curve is going to unfold. For me, as a reader and as a writer, I have always loved language level stuff. I love short form. I love a good stand-up comic who can build a small world and then explode it within the span of a joke, set up punch.
Yeah.
So I like that kind of miniature forms. Yeah.
Do you ever ponder, when you're writing a song, do you ponder the listener when you're doing it?
I do in a very limited way. So sometimes there are points of confusion that can be inserted into the song without the songwriters having intended to. So if I mention in a verse my mother or a former lover or something, and then I mention a dog, and then I get to the chorus and I say, she was always with me, I might not realize that I haven't recently defined that pronoun. So unless I'm looking for an ambiguous interpretation, the listener might think I'm talking about my mom or a former lover or the dog. And so a lot of times I think trying to put myself not into a specific listener's shoes, but trying to approach material that is so familiar.
Right.
Fresh ears. To look for weak spots, to see what might not be load bearing, to tap on the walls, see where the studs are, and make sure that you're building soundly. Yeah.
I love that. And I saw a lot of that. The book from 2018. I personalized stuff because I was living in Uptown in the 2000s, but it felt like I was very much reading your journey about you. But then all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, I'm that. And I think it's a very inclusive style you have that way.
That's kind. I love the idea of that being true. I think mine's who have pondered the creative arts long before me have noted that kind of weird, counterintuitive relationship that somehow writing about the most particular thing can lead to the most general resonance. If you write a song or a poem generally, in very general terms about love, it's hard to attach to anybody's heartstrings. Roses are red, go ahead. That's Hallmark. But to write a love story where people are gonna be, like, sufficiently emotionally invested to get hung up, to give a F, right? That takes writing about a particular person's eyebrows and the funny way that they walked and the strange habits with yogurt, all of those weirdly specific things allow another person, I think, just cuddle up with you in your spacecraft of one, which is like your singular body moving through the world just this one time, right? So to provide them with enough detail to say, this is what it felt like, that they then can be moved by the same emotions that made their way into your heart because you presented them in a rigorous way, in a careful way, in an artful way
Right.
with the same evidence that moved you.
So when you're approaching things with that reverence, and I hope this doesn't come across as a simplistic question, but I'm a simple dude from Wisconsin. But I'm trying to think of a better way of saying, is writer Dessa different than MC Dessa?
A writer doesn't have to rhyme.
Yeah.
And C Dessa has all the tools of like timing and intonation, which writer I don't have as a writer. So I think my hope would be that my ego, my own self-concept can be put aside during the writing process at the same time while engaging, the talent and the craft of writing, such that there's not too much difference between the writer Dessa and the one that is talking to you.
Yeah.
The page is gonna be better edited. I tend to repeat myself a lot, but I would say that there probably is a slightly more arch style as an MC, as I'm responding in part to, like, the constraints and the strengths of the form. But one of them is timing, right? Like,
Yeah.
unless you're working in really weird musical forms, a song is usually gonna be more than a minute long, and it's rarely gonna be more than 8. And that's, like, a huge that's a really strict format when you think about
Right.
it. You could be writing for something that lasts a year. You could be
Right.
writing something that lasts for 3 blinks and no more. So I think, yeah, there is sort of like a more slightly costumed and reverent and a little more theater to the songs that I write as an MC. Although not, I don't think, to my presentation of them. But
Right. I think everything we do has some pretense. I'm not
sure.
wearing mountain biking clothes and like having a beer while I'm doing this or whatever. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I think that's such a great point. Many moons ago when I was teaching creative writing, I would mention that a lot to students. Like, the way that you're gonna say someone looks pretty is different if you're telling your mom on Easter than if you're talking to the finest guy at the food court. They're just gonna be different language that you're gonna
Yeah.
use to express that. So yeah, I think I hadn't really thought to put it in the framework of pretense, but you're right. There are like cultural expectations and constraints and context that we all
Yeah.
just as we move through our lives. Yeah.
Well, I think I was actually thinking about that a little bit listening to your podcast last night, specifically the one on uniforms and what they represent about what we show ourselves, how we show ourselves in the world. I think it's like everything is that sort of a message in a way.
And I think it's interesting. I remember reading a book, I think it was by Annie Dillard, but do you like Annie Dillard?
I love her stuff.
I think she's so brilliant, and she's interesting because she writes a lot about the natural world. I know that to my discredit, I'm, like, not a naturalist, but the way that like, seeing a rock through her eyes makes me super invested in this rock.
Yeah.
And she, I think, had written about years and years ago, historic data, an asylum for the blind, as it was called then. People were cured of their cataracts, and so you had people who were young, some of them in their teens and 20s, who were seeing for the first time since they'd been toddlers,
Oh.
and realizing, "Oh, I didn't realize I was sending visual signal this whole time." Like, you and I can sit quietly, and then we're not sending auditory signal.
Right.
And senses work really differently. Like you're always broadcasting visually by virtue of the fact that you have a body that exists in space. And so I think a lot of the expectations that we have with how we comport ourselves across those different senses have to do with how readily we are perceived.
Oh, totally. I suppose it's a simplistic thing, but like I was thinking about like romantic relationships when, as you said that, like how you can read when that person is happy, quiet, or
Yeah, totally.
it's it. Oh man, this is amazing. One thing I had wanted to ask, because I put a little pin in my brain to ask you about this. You're teaching a class right now that sounds intriguing. What is that all about?
So I am currently serving as the artist in residence at Georgetown University, which is in DC. And I'm working with a new program that they've just started called the Music Sustainability Initiative, which is devised essentially to try to figure out how musicians are working issues of labor and aesthetics in our changing industry and how AI is going to affect all of it. And so my role there actually is I'm one of many sets of hands who are helping to put on a conference on AI and how it affects the music that's being made, how it's listened to, how it's distributed. Yeah, it's been educative, man. It's been a super interesting process so far. Yeah.
Weird question, but have you ever tried dropping one of your tracks in AI to see how it sounds?
Yeah, I remember when ChatGPT was brand new and everyone was messing with it. I did ask it to generate some lyrics in the style of Dessa. And I remember thinking, these are whack. And now they're less whack. Now they're better. So I'm not one of the artists who thinks that there is an absolute ceiling that AI can't reach. I think we're gonna be changing in big ways as it enters the chat.
Oh, totally. We got 10 minutes, but I did want you mentioned monetary gain in music, and that one's always been interesting to me because I remember I've been a booker my entire life because I can't play out. But like I remember it's been so funny because the last when I started booking, people were like, oh, it used to be so different. It used to make so much more money. Sorry, I don't mean to do Wisconsin accents. We're doing it. But then even 20 years ago, and I'm like, here's the deal with music as a business. That isn't even like 100 years old, more or less. If we want to say like 1930-ish, roughly, when like music is an actual like lucrative thing.
It's tricky because I think that the role of musician and the avenues for compensation were so different historically as to probably be, like, really hard to recognize. You're right, there's no club circuit, there's no booker,
Yeah,
there's no you, there's no me, for sure.
right.
But
Well, and people don't drink, which is a whole nother thing,
it's
which is
what you
good.
did it. Yeah, just to make sure or just to ensure that listeners are tracking. So, rightly or wrongly, probably the latter, like, a bunch of the music industry is propped up by bar sales, so
Yeah.
there's not enough money being generated by tickets to actually pay the club and pay the talent, and so the whole system relies on this ocean of booze. And so I do think, though, that it'll be interesting to see what kind of models emerge because obviously there were people making music and they might have been compensated for them, but in a different
Yeah.
environment, like the selling of recorded music is obviously brand new. What does it mean to be commissioned by the king?
Right.
Right. We had really different models, and so I imagine in the next couple 100 years, the model of today is gonna look hard to recognize too.
It's funny you mentioned the Kinks. I was thinking minstrels as you were saying that. I'm like, oh yeah, the same wavelength there. Yeah, it's man, it's I don't even know what it's gonna be. It's insanity to me, but
It's
so glad you're working at that.
Oh, yeah. I'll report back with the definitive answer. No, I think it's been interesting to watch other indie bands say the same exactly what you just said. Yo, the margins are so slight that some of the bands that I really admire, who are much bigger, have posted like, "Oh, how difficult it is to make a living." So we'll see whether the emphasis continues to be on live performance or some other thing. My concern is if there's more money in writing jingles or in sponsoring a product, then you're gonna get jingle writers.
Yeah.
And instead of really challenging cool music. And I'm also like, hey, write a catchy jingle, write a catchy pop song, but I hope there's room for the expensive stuff too.
Oh yeah. And one other thing with music, while we're talking about, One thing that just never I don't think that was ever built in is that like you don't really age out of being in a band.
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen's still writing songs. Still wrote a really good one recently, in my opinion. And he's still out there doing it. And yeah, it's an interesting thing because you don't have like new workers replacing the old. You just have the old sticking around. And
Yeah.
now you don't have rooms for the new in the cities anyway. I don't want to get too anti-Minneapolis, but it's
Yeah, when you
tough.
say rooms, I bet your listeners already know, but you mean performance rooms, like the venues that are gonna support smaller up and coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Like these of the world.
yeah. Yeah. I think one of the features that was not evident to me of a musical infrastructure was exactly that, that a city, to be able to foster really great talent, needs that cafe where you first start when you only know 7 chords and your voice is shaking, and
Yeah.
your sit-down spot all the way up to the mid-sized clubs, the big spots, the arenas. To have that kind of ladder where you're climbing rung by rung is a big part of the musical infrastructure that makes a city, like ecosystem successful. Shout out to my colleague at Georgetown, Michael Bracey, for teaching me about it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember always getting excited when friends were at the "I'm handing out comps to my fine line" show level. That was my favorite in there.
God, I remember, like, standing outside First Avenue in Minneapolis with a box of flyers. We would make note of all the shows in the city that sounded a little bit like us, and then we'd stand outside when that show let out so that we could flyer everybody, handbills hand to hand. I remember one of the first shows that I was playing solo, somebody went, "I know her. That's that girl who hands out flyers." I was like, "You were to my show."
Oh, man. You first have shows, you used to walk out with so much paper because you'd go in there and they'd give you 17 free tickets, and, like, then you get some on the way out.
Totally.
I could do this for hours. We have 4 minutes left. Let's tell that person there where to do some stuff. It's a call to action that we do at the end of podcasts to make this whole thing a thing.
Okay, yeah, I'd say that, first of all, thanks for listening. Second, if people would like to check out the tour routing to see when we are where, I'll be running around the Midwest quite a bit this summer.
You're coming to Eau Claire, which is always fun.
Yeah, I love Eau Claire. I'll be there on the 18th of July, and then I'll be in Viroqua as well, which I really dig.
Prettiest places we have.
I've never played Viroqua, so after this call, you gotta give me your suggestions.
Oh, that driftless. Plan a couple days to just hang.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll be there, and if people wanna check it out, they can follow me on socials. I'm at Dessa, Dessa, on Instagram, and my website with the full routing is dessawander.com.
And I'd say follow your Bandcamp too, because you do a lot of great things there.
We try. I think to your point earlier about the passing flyers hand to hand of your
Yeah.
is, of course, like, posting constantly online now, and I think to the extent I'm able, like, we try to make it creative and, like, playful and thoughtful in its own right, because otherwise I should just get a desk job. So
Oh,
we try to do some cool stuff on Bandcamp and on socials and the rest that makes it feel like a creative exchange. Yeah.
awesome. Dessa, thank you so much for this chat. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
For sure. Peace.